The question posed, how much time is left until the end of Trump, contains within it both the desperate hope for resolution and the implicit illusion that the end of one figure will mark the end of a problem. But to truly address this question, we must look beyond the individual, we must probe the roots, we must examine what allowed this phenomenon, not merely the person, but the ideology, the spectacle, and the decay of institutions, to take hold in the first place. Because if we don't, we'll simply be waiting for the next iteration, another name, another brand, another demagogue. The end of a presidency does not equate to the end of a movement. To treat a politician as a historical fluke or an anomaly is to betray a grave misunderstanding of our political culture. The rise of authoritarian figures doesn't occur in a vacuum. It emerges in a context social, economic, informational. It emerges in a culture so thoroughly enraptured by the immediate and the sensational that it cannot discern truth from illusion. The spectacle becomes reality, facts are reduced to narratives, and narratives are sold by the highest bidder. So the question isn't only how long until he's gone, but also what are we doing while he's here? And perhaps more importantly, what will we do when he's gone? When we ask how much time is left until the end, we are often looking to a name, a face, a personality. But the truth is deeper and more uncomfortable. This moment is not about a single man, it is about a system that made space for him to rise. A stage was built long before he walked upon it, and the lights were positioned, the audience gathered, the script written. What we see now is the performance, not the architecture beneath it. And if we focus only on the actor, we miss the quiet machinery backstage that keeps the illusion alive. The true danger lies not in the loud voice of one person, but in the silence of institutions that should speak, the apathy of citizens who feel powerless, and the manipulation of information that has turned confusion into strategy. It is not only about what was said at a rally or written in a post. It is about what we allowed to fester in our homes, our newsrooms, our classrooms. For decades, education was stripped of purpose, journalism sold to the highest bidder, and democracy reduced to entertainment. When meaning disappears, noise takes its place. We must awaken to this, not in despair, but in clarity. Systems that reward spectacle over substance, profit over people, division over unity are not accidents. They are designs, and if we wish to change the future, we cannot merely replace the actor. We must redesign the stage. That means questioning who funds our truths, who benefits from our fear, and who remains invisible while power changes hands. It means understanding that injustice is not new. It is simply now televised, tweeted, and normalized. This is not a call to hatred or retribution. It is a call to awareness. To awaken spiritually means not only to seek peace, but to seek truth. And truth often lives in places we've been taught to avoid. History books that challenge our comfort, communities we've never entered, questions we've never dared to ask. The end we are hoping for, the collapse of a harmful reign, must be the beginning of a deeper cleansing, one that begins within each of us. We cannot fight lies with more lies, or corruption with indifference. We must meet deception with illumination. Let us then reflect not on how to remove a name from a headline, but how to restore integrity to our shared life. Let us not chase the illusion of a single solution, but build resilient communities that cannot be swayed by fear. If we treat symptoms while ignoring the disease, the sickness will return, stronger, smarter, more seductive. But if we tend to the roots, nourish them with truth and courage, then no face, however loud, however angry, can dominate the garden we grow. This is where the real path begins, when we realize that the end of one chapter must be written by hands willing to hold pens, not torches. And as we move forward, we must carry not just opposition in our hearts, but vision. For the next steps will demand not only resistance, but reimagination, compassion, and the courage to build what was long neglected. From here, the work deepens. Real change does not arrive through spectacle or savior. It does not descend like lightning from the sky, nor rise effortlessly from the ballot box. Real change is built. It is shaped by hands calloused with patience, courage, and faith. It emerges from the hearts of people who refuse to surrender to despair, who choose instead to believe that their voices matter even when drowned out by thunder. And so, we must stop waiting for a single moment to save us. The clock does not rescue, it reminds, and what it reminds us now is this: time will not bring justice unless we do. The temptation is always to outsource responsibility, to place it on leaders, governments, or elections. We are taught to wait, to believe that the next vote, the next debate, the next policy will correct the course of a nation. But such waiting is a form of spiritual sleep. What is needed now is not passivity, but awakening. A spiritual awakening that calls us back to our roles, not as spectators, but as stewards of justice, of truth, of dignity. Democracy does not survive by itself. It survives when people show up for each other, even when the stage lights have dimmed and the world seems distracted. Collective action is not just protest in the streets, though that is sacred. It is also the quiet organizing in homes and churches, the conversations at kitchen tables, the care extended to neighbors, the bridges built between strangers. It is the decision to stay informed, to teach others, to interrupt lies with compassion and clarity. It is to carry truth like a lantern through dark corridors, knowing that someone behind you needs that light to find their way. Alone we flicker, together we burn with purpose. When we gather across differences, across doubts, we remind the world that love is still more powerful than fear. And not the shallow love that whispers comfort without responsibility, but the deep love that disrupts injustice, that holds systems accountable, that says enough, not with hatred but with holiness. Such solidarity is not built overnight. It is built day by day, failure by failure, forgiveness by forgiveness. It is built when we look at one another and say, I see your struggle, and I will not turn away. The end we seek of deceit, of division, of destructive rule, will only come when we, the people, realize that we are not powerless. The greatest lie ever told was that our efforts are too small. But history is a river made from small drops. Letters written, meetings held, meals shared, hands lifted in protest and in prayer. Each act of truth, each moment of courage, bends that river just a little more toward justice. If we believe that our labor is in vain, then the loudest voices win. But if we persist, not just in resistance, but in rebuilding, we become the tide that no one can stop. And so, as we continue to ask how much time is left, let us remember that the answer depends on how we move together. Not just in anger, but in unity, not only to tear down what is broken, but to raise up what is beautiful. The clock does not count down toward a miracle. It counts forward into the space we create with our actions. What we do now, how we stand, how we serve, how we speak, determines the future we inherit, and this, too, leads us onward. Truth in times like these is not merely under attack, it is being auctioned. It is bent and sold, reshaped to fit desires, discarded when inconvenient, when the airwaves grow louder than our inner conscience, and when emotion replaces evidence, the soul of a people begins to drift. Yet we must remember, truth is not noise, it is stillness, it is clarity that does not shout, but stands firm, and in an age of deliberate confusion, to speak truth, to live truth, to defend truth, is not only political, it is sacred. What we are witnessing is not just political dysfunction, It is the collapse of shared meaning. Words have been weaponized, facts are treated as opinions, lies are repeated until they become cultural furniture, barely noticed. This is not an accident, it is strategy, because when people lose their grip on what is real, they can be led anywhere, they no longer resist, they react, and so the task before us is not just to oppose untruth, but to rebuild the very ground where truth can take root again. To reclaim truth is to reclaim the human spirit. It means rejecting the easy comfort of echo chambers and engaging the hard work of discernment. It means admitting when we are wrong, listening when it is difficult, and seeking understanding not to win arguments, but to heal what's broken. Truth cannot live in arrogance or pride. It lives in humility and perseverance, and this spiritual discipline of choosing truth over convenience is how we grow into people who can carry freedom with integrity. Truth also demands protection, not from force alone, but from forgetfulness, because history warns us, when truth is not defended, it is replaced, first by doubt, then by distraction, then by domination. We cannot afford to be passive observers in this struggle. Each lie unchallenged makes space for more. Each silence creates a vacuum where distortion breeds. Protecting truth is not merely a task for journalists or scholars. It is a daily devotion for anyone who believes in dignity, in justice, in peace. Let us not become cynical, for cynicism is the slow death of moral responsibility. When we say nothing is true, we are not being wise, we are surrendering, but when we say truth still matters, we begin to rise again, we begin to live as if the future depends on us, because it does. It depends on whether we will tell the truth to our children, to our neighbors, to ourselves. It depends on whether we will uphold it in systems that seek to erase it. So as we ask how much time remains, let us understand that time will only move us toward freedom if it moves us toward truth. Every lie that is uprooted clears space for what is honest and whole. Every truth spoken with love becomes a seed for something lasting, and it is here, in the defense and renewal of truth, that our journey must continue, step by step, voice by voice, light by light. The roots of demagoguery are found in despair, economic despair, moral despair, informational despair. When people are stripped of their agency, when systems are designed not for participation but for compliance, when voices are drowned out by money and truth is trampled by entertainment, what emerges is not just apathy but resentment. And in that resentment, space is created for the strongman, for the one who promises order amidst chaos, for the one who says, "I alone can fix it." It is not difficult to recognize the characteristics: contempt for truth, scapegoating of the vulnerable, disdain for democratic norms, celebration of ignorance masquerading as authenticity. These are not new. History provides ample warnings. But what must concern us now is not just the man at the center of the spectacle, but the soil that nourishes him. That soil has been carefully prepared. For decades, public institutions have been eroded. The media, once tasked with challenging power, has largely become an extension of it, consolidated, corporatized, and incentivized to pursue ratings rather than truth. Education, instead of cultivating critical thought, has increasingly become a tool of obedience, teaching students to memorize, not to question. Democracy has become theater, with citizens reduced to consumers of ideology rather than participants in collective governance. In such a climate, it is no wonder that authoritarianism finds a foothold. It doesn't need to seize power overnight. It creeps in slowly, steadily, under the cover of slogans and tweets, of chaos and fatigue. It exploits divisions that have long existed, racial, economic, ideological, and amplifies them until solidarity becomes nearly impossible. Divide and conquer has always been the strategy of those in power. Now, with algorithms that fragment our information landscape and reinforce our biases, that strategy has reached new heights of efficiency. So again, how long until the end? If you mean the man, perhaps not long. His reign may end at the ballot box through legal judgment or by the tide of history, but the system that allowed him to rise, that will remain unless we act. This is where the motivational part must begin, though it cannot be rooted in false hope. It must be rooted in responsibility, the responsibility of those who can see to help others see, the responsibility of those who can speak, to speak the truth even when it's unpopular, especially when it's unpopular. We must resist the temptation to treat politics as spectacle. We must reject the passivity that says it's out of our hands. It is in our hands, always has been. That's the terrifying truth and the liberating one. There is no savior coming to rescue us. There is no candidate, no party, no billionaire benefactor who will restore dignity to the democratic process. That will come only when we demand it, when we organize. When we build alternatives, when we stop hoping for heroes and start becoming one another's allies, we must rebuild from the ground up. That means reclaiming education, not just in the classroom, but in everyday life. Teaching one another, sharing knowledge, building media that informs rather than inflames, supporting institutions that foster solidarity rather than exploitation. It also means facing hard truths, including the truth that many who support authoritarian figures do so not out of malice, but out of desperation, out of a belief, often justified, that the system has failed them. If we write them off as merely stupid or evil, we ensure the cycle continues. We must listen not to validate hatred, but to understand the conditions in which it thrives, and to dismantle those conditions. It is not enough to defeat a figure. We must defeat the ideology, and to do that we must understand it. We must understand why millions found solace in falsehood, why they preferred the comfort of lies to the burden of truth, and we must create something better, not just rhetorically, but materially. That means jobs, healthcare, housing, dignity, not as charity, but as justice. Authoritarianism is attractive in a system where dignity is scarce. The promise of restoration, of a mythical past where things were great, is appealing when the present is unbearable. So we must make the present bearable. We must make the future believable, not with empty slogans, but with real action. So, how much time is left? As much as we allow. We can choose resignation, cynicism, and inaction, in which case he may leave, but his shadow will remain, or we can choose to see clearly, to act decisively, to organize strategically, in which case his reign, his true reign, not just the man but what he represents, can end sooner than anyone expects. The future is not written. It is not determined by polls, pundits, or powerful men. It is determined by what ordinary people are willing to do when they realize their power, when they refuse to be spectators in their own democracy, when they insist that truth matters, that justice matters, that human life matters more than profit, more than ideology, more than power. Do not wait for permission to act. Do not wait for the next election cycle, the next media scandal, the next catastrophe. Begin now in your community, in your workplace, in your conversations. Speak truth where lies are dominant. Practice solidarity where division is assumed. Show that another world is not only possible, but necessary. History is not the story of great men. It is the story of movements, of resistance, of people who refuse to accept that the way things are is the way they must always be, that power must forever be concentrated, that cruelty is inevitable, that justice is naive. If we believe in nothing else, believe in the power of people to surprise, to resist, to build anew. The forces of destruction are powerful, but they are not omnipotent. They depend on our silence, on our despair. On our belief that nothing can change, so how much time is left, that depends on us, on whether we allow him to define our era, or whether we define it ourselves. Let us be clear, this is not just a political struggle. It is a moral one, an existential one, and yes, it is exhausting. But despair is a luxury we cannot afford. Not when children are in cages, not when the planet burns, not when truth is mocked and cruelty is celebrated. This moment will be remembered not for what he did, but for what we did. Did we speak? Did we act? Did we resist? Did we build? The clock is ticking, not on one man's term in office, but on the democratic experiment itself. It will survive not through hope alone, but through courage, through collective action, through the refusal to surrender to cynicism. Do not wait for the end, be the beginning.